Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Genesis Invitational Data Dive Show. We have a lot of great information to cover this evening. A lot of the past leaderboards. I'll show you some of the research that I posted to social media earlier today. Of course, want to hear from you all if you put in any wagers this morning or this afternoon when the odds came out. Who have you focused on so far this week in your DFS lineups? We have a fun show for you all, so let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there. There are a lot of great tools out there, don't get me wrong. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I post research every week on the PGA Tour. That comes out every Monday afternoon, and today was no different. I posted research around winners going all the way back to 2012 for Riviera and the players that qualify or fit the criteria for the pattern that I have found for past champions at the Genesis Invitational. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do every week on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site, X or Instagram. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player exposure, or most used players in DFS, if you will, for the week's slate. So if you want to see those pieces of information, you can follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's social media handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a very good way to start your week of research. He did take the week off this week due to some family plans that he had, but he will be back next week, and normally every week he provides you a very good way to start your research, and then throughout the week he will continue on with recent form, course history, and all that. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, by the way, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening as we continue the DFS discussion after calls. He is gracious enough to host me in his Substack chat, and we continue with our thoughts on the week's slate in his Substack chat. So go show Gabe some support, subscribe to his article, and follow him over on social media. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Again, want to hear from you all. How was your waste management? Did you have the Chiefs outright or Chiefs money line last night in the Super Bowl? What'd you think of the Super Bowl? What was your favorite commercial? And then for the Genesis, who are you targeting this week? Have you made any wagers? What do you think plays well here? What type of player? All of that stuff. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2024 Genesis Invitational. And we start, as we always do, on a Monday evening over at the extended forecast over at Windfinder. The super forecast will be available starting Wednesday, but so far looks pretty calm in terms of weather this week at Riviera. Thursday and Friday, not a whole lot of wind. Maybe picks up a little bit in the afternoon, but nothing extraordinary to where if this were the forecast come Wednesday, I wouldn't have any favor of half of the field. Saturday, much the same. Now Sunday looks like it could be a little more difficult as you see some of the rain coming in. It looks like they're going to have a lot of rain Monday. So if this forecast gets moved up, perhaps Sunday could be an issue, but at least for now, we're not going to be looking at any wind metrics in Fantasy National as Thursday, Friday, and Saturday look pristine. Maybe a little chilly, especially for those playing, earlier in the morning, but looks pretty pristine. And that reminds me that I have a correction that I need to do. So there's your forecast. We'll close out of that. Before we get too heavily involved over at Fantasy National, I mentioned last night that this was a no-cut event. This is a signature event, but I was mistaken. This is going to have a cut very similar to the Masters in the sense that the top 50 and any player within 10 shots of the lead after the second round will make the cut. So this, even though this is a signature event, we are going to have a cut this week. So I do need to correct myself from last night. There is a cut this week. So make sure you note that. It is the top 50 and anybody within 10 shots. All right, so with that, we are going to do a little bit of review here just very quickly. Riviera is pretty difficult. We saw that last night. It can really produce some high scores if players aren't playing all that well. Let's see, if we look at the tournament history, that is kind of what I wanted to go to, I think. Shoot. Apologies. Let me get this, because I'm trying to get to the historic conditions. That is what I want. So if we look at the historic conditions, you can see most of the rounds played at average. More often than not, you're going to have difficult. We had a difficult round last year. We had an easy round in 2022, but more often than not, you're going to have more difficult rounds than easy rounds here at Riviera. And with that, I am, let's see, let's go back. So last year, your defending champion, who's not here because he is on Live Now, Rom, at 17 under. Neiman at 19 under. Of course, that had one easy round in it. 12 under for Max in 2021. 2020, 11 under. So you're not going to get a big birdie fest. I would venture that the winning score this week will be probably in the mid-teens. My guess is going to be in the 15 to 17 area. I do not see the winner getting to 20 under this week. So with that, when rounds are difficult to par, our top performers in the field this week: Scotty Scheffler, Victor Hovland, Rory, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood, Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, and Matt Fitzpatrick are your top 10 when rounds are difficult relative to par. Now, it's not a guarantee that Riv will play difficult every single round. I just think it's going to tend to be on that end of the spectrum as opposed to the easier side. More than likely, we're going to be looking at an average scoring tournament overall. But I do want to give you a little bit of review here on the top players when it's difficult. Continue on down, maybe the top 15 or so. Let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit here for you all. It's going to cut off the putting. I'll have to zoom out for putting. But continue on down. Ricky Fowler, Max Homa, Bent On, Sepp Straka, Denny McCarthy. Those are your top 15 in terms of rounds when it's difficult. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not played well when it's difficult. You'll have to excuse Charlie Hoffman. They added him late to the page view since he played well enough to play his way into the Genesis. But Tom Hoagie, Matt Kuchar, Grayson Murray, Nick Dunlap, very few rounds, obviously, but did not play well when it's difficult. Luke List, Nick Hardy, Justin Thomas, Tiger, only one round. Sam Ryder, Mackenzie Hughes, Seamus Power, Nick Taylor, and so on down are your players that have not played well when rounds are difficult relative to par. So let me zoom back out here and remove this filter. Let's go ahead and just kind of jump straight into these prior leaderboards since we're not going to be looking at the wind filter. Obviously not moderate or windy. Not a whole lot that I like to look at with calm. Course length, Riviera is just over 7,300 yards, so right in the middle of the boundaries between short and long courses. I generally don't look at courses with pars to 71 or 70 or 72. You could argue perhaps to do that, but that's not something that I am too keen on. And of course, no architect filter. So with that, let's just take a look at these prior leaderboards and figure out the metrics that have played the best over the past couple of years, 2 to 3 years here at Riviera. We took a little bit of a look at this last night in Microsoft Excel, but it's always useful to go through the prior leaderboards and see where the correlations fall and such. So if we look at, say, the top 17, just due to ties last year, you can see all of the massive number of approach and the volume. I mean, 12 from John Rahm. You got 7.5 from Tagala, 5.5 from Kuchar, the 10 from Gary Woodland here. So approach, pretty big deal. Putting as well. Poa annua, these greens are large and they are generally pretty fast. So 3 putts can get to be a thing here. We'll definitely want to take a look at that either later tonight, or I can tell you that 3 putt avoidance on Poa annua will definitely be in the mixed condition model come Wednesday night. Off the tee, little hit and miss. You don't have necessarily a lot of big numbers in here. In fact, the largest number I see is a 5 essentially for Scotty Scheffler. Around the green, now our winner last year was negative around the green, but a lot of decent performances. So if we sort on each of these, off the tee, like I said, 4.9 is the largest. Our winner was nowhere near the top in terms of off the tee. You got some decent performances here, though. Cut making, Johnny Vegas, an off the tee or ball striker in general. He didn't look like he made a putt last year. Made the cut to a clunker of a finish, but 12th, 3rd, 5th, 4th, 20th, 8th, 20th, 9th. Pretty solid. A little bit misleading last night when we looked at Riviera against other full field courses, considering off the tee was such a negative in relation to other courses, but you got some decent correlation here. Maybe not necessarily the highest in terms of strokes gained like you will see in the approach and the putting, but decent correlation nonetheless. Approach, 12, 11.5. What you don't see are a lot of huge missed cuts. The first one you have to scroll a little bit for Smotherman and Spieth. Rahm, your winner, led in approach. You always like to see that. You also have top 10, top 10, top 10, surrounded with some middling finishes around the green. And this is why I said last night why I think around the green is going to be a much bigger factor than what the data might have shown. Look at all these top 10 finishes. I mean, even J.J. Spawn was respectable. It was a middling finish, but respectable. Now, you do have some poor performances, some missed cuts here from McGreevy and Cage Lee. A lot of that you can contribute to the poor irons and a little bit of poor putting, but they were good around the green. But look at all of this correlation here at the top. Now, our winner wasn't up here in terms of around the green. He was technically negative, but a lot of solid to elite performances with around the green and correlating with high leaderboard finishes. And then if we look at putting, our winner was a little bit further down, maybe in the top 12 or so, but our runner-up led 12th, 20th. Some big numbers in here as well. 11.5, 9, 7.5, 7, 6, 5, almost 6, 5.5. So off the tee might have a little bit more than I was thinking was going to, especially considering a little bit of correlation here. If we look at 2022, Joaquin Niemann's win, and when Cam Young and Colin Morikawa tied for second. This is just the top 14. Again, off the tee, fairly solid. Not a whole lot of big numbers in here. The highest looks to be about a 5.2. I do see a 5.9 a little bit further down. You're going to get much bigger volume or numbers, if you will, in the approach and the putting. But if we sort 21st, 2nd, 21st, 6th, pretty, fairly solid. Not as correlating as last year's, I would say. The approach, once again, this is 2 straight years that the leader in strokes gained approach won the tournament. First, a 33rd from Finau, 4th, 7th, 15th, 13th, 15th, 2nd. I mean, approach is going to be a major factor this week. major factor. Around the green, you're also getting some bigger numbers in here from last year, or you're getting bigger numbers 2 years ago than you were last year. 10th. Now our winner was second in around the green. Some clunkers and some middling cuts, but again, the around the green, you have to scroll a decent amount till you get your first missed cut from Vincent Whaley. So your around the green is going to contribute to your cut making, putting. Very solid in terms of correlation. Very solid. So as of right now, there appears to be an argument to put all 4 of the strokes gained in the mixed condition model. We're definitely going to have approach. We're obviously going to have some putting. I still feel confident that we want some around the green in here. The one that I am a little bit gun shy on is off the tee. But it's been somewhat correlating here in the past 2 leaderboards. So we won't spend a whole lot of time on the off the tee, but your top off the tee players, and again, I'm just checking to make sure I have all the filters ignored. In your last 36 rounds or 12 months, your top off the tee players in the field this week: Scotty Scheffler and Rory, Ludwig Aubert, Victor Hovland, Corey Connors, Kevin Yu, Ben On, Patrick Cantlay. Stefan Jaeger is out. He is the 6th in the Aon Swing 5. So he was bumped out due to Harmon. So let me highlight Jaeger and Jake Knapp. Those are the 2 that fell out of the field. So let's try this again very quickly. Our top 10 and off the tee: Scheffler, Rory, Aubert, Hovland, Connors, Kevin Yu, Ben On, Patrick Cantlay, Max Homa, and Colin Morikawa. Approach, we definitely want to put a lot of emphasis into this. So as I mentioned, off the tee is going to have the least of the 4 if it does end up making it into the final mixed condition model. I'm a little bit on the fence with that, but off the tee would be 4th of the 4 of the strokes gained. Approach is going to be the most important, at least for me so far. So our top approach players in the field this week: in the last 36 rounds, Scotty Scheffler, Lucas Glover, Sam Ryder, Xander, Colin Morikawa, Gary Woodland, Eric Cole, Tony Finau, Chris Kirk, and JT Poston. Don't want to forget around the green: Ricky, Russell Henley, Scotty Scheffler, JJ Spawn, Justin Thomas, Wyndham Clark, Brendan Todd, Mackenzie Hughes, Rory, and Tommy Fleetwood. Lastly, we're going to look at Poa Anna. And I'm going to have to get all records in here so we can look for Riv as well. Riviera. Nope, Redstone. There it is. So let me bring this into the last 2 years. In the past 2 years, on pure Poa Anna greens, most rounds is going to be 16, so a little bit of a smaller sample size. It's the best we can do, considering Fantasy National recently changed their site. The furthest you can go back is 2 years. Our top putters on Poa Anna the past 2 years: Max Homa, Denny McCarthy, Taylor Montgomery, Adam Schenk, Sam Ryder, Jason Day, Tom Hoagie, Brendan Todd, Colin Morikawa, and Seamus Power. All right, let's bring back all courses. I'll bring this back to the last 12 months and get this prepared for the fairways and greens as we look at last year's prior leaderboard. And when we went through Microsoft Excel last night a little bit, distance was a pretty big factor. It was pretty emphasized, at least in relation to other full field courses. And you're seeing that play out here from last year. Even Morikawa, who's not long off the tee, has a pretty big number here in terms of distance. We look at the top 17. You know, you have a few players that are negative, but look at the players that are really rising into your elite status here at Riviera. Rahm, Homa moves it. Cantlay can. Will Zalatoris, very big off the tee. Mitchell, big off the tee. Woodland. Svensson, maybe not so much, but Scheffler. Seamus can move it off the tee. So, looks like driving distance has a little bit of a factor. I don't see fairways having much of a factor. You see how many players are negative, at least in the top from the top 17 last year. Now you do have some massive numbers in greens gained, which I think is going to be a decent factor. You got an 11.5 from John Rahm, a 12.5 here from Gary Woodland. So if we sort on these individual metrics, again, Will Zalatoris, Keith Mitchell, Cameron Young, you do have a miscut from Stuart Sink fairly high, but you're surrounded with a lot of premier finishes. Your winner was 7th in distance, or maybe 8th. Yeah, 7th in distance. 4th, 5th, a top 20, a top 15, a winner, top 10, top 10. I think distance is going to have a decent amount of a factor this week. And if we look at greens, 9th, 1st, a couple more middling finishers around them, 8th, 4th, 12th, 3rd. It's fairly solid, but look at the sheer volume here in these greens gained, which kind of goes hand in hand with the approach, sure, but that is something I don't think we are going to want to ignore. If we look at 2022 fairways and greens, now our winner was quite negative in distance. He looked like he was taking more 3-woods off the tee, but even so, wasn't all that high in fairways either. But right under the winner in 2022, look at all the positive in distance here. Again, Morikawa, positive in distance. He's generally not the longest of hitters. Cam Young, Victor, JT, Scheffler, even CT Pan, who is not long off the tee. Rory, Xander, Homa. So again, if we look at just the top 14 here, only 3 players negative in distance. Now the interesting thing in 2022, 2 years ago, not a single player was negative in good drives gained. But there's not a huge number in here other than maybe Cameron Young and Tringali. But most of these are, right around 5 or 5.5, 4.5. Instead, look at all these greens numbers and look at that correlation. That's pretty darn strong. That's pretty darn strong in terms of correlation. If we look at distance, you got more so your cut making. I am interested. Let's look at 2021 just very, very quickly. See if it clears up the picture or muddies it even further. Now, distance wasn't a big factor at all in 2021. Doesn't look like. A little bit less. So, but a lot in the greens. 14.5 from John Rahm, finished in the top 5. 2nd, 8th. Your winner was fairly high up here. Top 15, top 20. I mean, even Jim Furyk, almost a top 25. So maybe slightly distance, but a lot in greens is what we're going to be looking at. So let me get that prepped for the next thing. I will take a slight look at distance, and I think just out of consistency, let's just go ahead and add the difficult relative to par filter, because that's what I'm going to look at for greens. So your top driving distance players when rounds are difficult, those players are Rory, Cameron Young, Adam Scott, Scotty Scheffler, Ben Ahn, Wyndham Clark, Sam Burns, Gary Woodland, Cam Davis, and Patrick Cantlay. We're looking at greens gained when a round is difficult to par. Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Colin Morikawa, Patrick Cantlay, Wyndham Clark, Sepp Straka, Tom Kim, Gary Woodland, Victor Hovland, and Rory. And we'll notice, a lot of these players are some of the highest in terms of strokes gained total in the last 5 years here at Riv. Cantlay, Morikawa, Xander, Rory, Hovland, Scheffler. What are they all doing? They're all hitting these greens when it's difficult. Morikawa, Xander, Scheffler, Cantlay, Hovland, Rory, even Cam Young, Will Zalatoris. They're just outside the top 10. They've played very well here. There's Will. There's Cameron Young. Even Wyndham Clark has played fairly well here. So hopefully that gives you a good idea on where I'm thinking or where I'm at right now in my thought process for making a mixed condition model. Going to be a lot in the greens. We can even look at some scrambling. When rounds are difficult to par, our best scramblers been on Taylor Montgomery, Tommy Fleetwood, Adam Hadwin, Sam Burns, Chris Kirk, Scotty Scheffler, Brendan Todd, Denny McCarthy, and Taylor Moore. We could also look potentially at scrambling on Poa Anna. So I'm trying to get this to reset to all records. And it's having a little bit of trouble. Let's just clear all. Alright, so let's go. Gosh dang it. We want, again, Pebble Beach Golf Links. We want Riv. And we want Torrey South. Add those filters. In the last 2 years, your top scramblers on Poa Anna. Putting is a big part of scrambling. So your top scramblers on Poa Anna services the last 2 years: Taylor Montgomery, Sam Ryder, Andrew Putnam, J-Day, Bo Hostler, McCarthy, Homa, JT, Harris English, Russell Henley, and Matt Kuchar. Something to think about. Another way to look at scrambling other than just difficult relative to par. Okay, let's get this set for the scoring. And we'll take a look. This is going to confuse me, so I'm going to exit out of that. Let's take a look at scoring. Birdies gained, bogey avoidance. We saw last night that the bogey avoidance was by far and away the more important of the two against other full field courses. Now, our leaders, our first and second place, really shined in the birdies gained. But there are some pretty big numbers here also in the bogey avoidance. Top 17. Only one player negative in birdies gained. Let's see. 3 in the bogey avoidance if we sort. Second, first, fourth. And then a lot of correlation right after it. So that's very strong. That's going to be tough to beat from the bogey avoidance. Yeah, not quite as much. 3rd, 18th, 6th, 8th, 12th, 18th. You even have a 50th up here. So last year was more so the birdies gained. I think that's going to be an outlier if we go through these prior years. In fact, Joaquin Niemann's year, there you go. Not a single player negative in bogey avoidance in 2022. You had a couple negative in birdies gained. Now, as always, the bigger numbers are going to be in the birdies gained. But we're looking for correlation. We're looking for the number of players who were positive in that aspect. 2nd, 4th, 15th, 1st. I mean, still, you're gaining birdies. You're going to be rising on the leaderboards. No doubt about that. But you have a pretty high miscut here from Vincent Whaley. Whereas in the bogey avoidance, look at this correlation. Your winner's not as high up here, closer to the bottom of your screen, maybe top 20. 2nd, 13th, 9th, 7th, 6th. Middling from Carlos Ortiz, 10th, 15th. You don't have a miscut up here for a long while in terms of bogey avoidance. And 2021, much the same in terms of birdies and bogeys gained. Or birdies gained, bogeys avoided. Again, top 14, neither side had a negative in it. Sorting, solid, very solid, but you have a 38th, a 43rd, bogey avoidance. 26 leaded, but 8th, 5th, 20th, 3rd, 1st, 5th. I think it's the bogey avoidance this week that we're going to want to focus on. At least that's where I'm at. But be interested to hear the community's thoughts. Go ahead and put it in chat or leave it in the comments if you're not able to catch the show live. When rounds are difficult, your top bogey avoiders in the field this week: Scotty Scheffler, Tommy Fleetwood, Wyndham Clark, Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Ben On, Hideki, and Rory. Those are your top 10 or 12 technically. bogey avoiders when rounds are difficult. Because of what I think is going to be an interesting or an important part here that we haven't covered yet, we're about to, proximity. Let's just take a look at opportunities gained. I guess because we've kept the difficult relative to par filter on for all of these metrics so far, I'll keep the opportunities or the difficult filter on for opportunities. I'm not confident that's what I'll end up doing for the mixed condition model, but just in an effort to be consistent, your top opportunities gained players when rounds are difficult: Scotty Scheffler, Eric Cole, Chris Kirk, Hideki, Colin Morikawa, Wyndham Clark, Ben On, Sahith Theegala, Rory, and Cam Young. All right, let's get this prep for proximity. This is one that I really, really was interested in seeing. Now, just as a reminder, the majority of approach shots come from 150 to 175, but even in relation to the PGA Tour average event, you've got 150 to 200 is essentially the two proximities that we were wanting to look at the most, and 175 to 200 did kind of stand out in the early look file last night. So if we look at last year's leaderboard, again, top 17, look at the 200 plus. 200 plus was pretty standout, if you will. Only two players negative, and really one was really close to field average. So 200 plus, as I thought. Total proc seems to be a decent factor. Not a whole lot in these two. If we sort, you got some pretty good cut making in here. I wouldn't say it's extreme correlation, but some solid performances here other than Johnny Vegas and Scott Piercy. So total procs again looking potentially like something. 150 to 175, not a whole lot. Your winner was fairly high up here, but you got a pretty high miscut, 56th, 67th, not very strong. 175 to 200 doesn't have much at all. Bunch of miscuts up here. 200 plus, look at that. Your winner led in 200 plus. Several top 10s, a top 20. Yes, you have some high miscuts up here, but boy, that is the range so far in my eyes, other than maybe total procs. If we look at 2 years ago, proximity, much more hectic. It feels kind of scattered all around. Decent performances here. You got some cut making. I wouldn't say it's extreme correlation. 4th, 15th, 2nd, 1st, but kind of falls off very quickly after that. 150 to 175, not a whole lot. 175 to 2, kind of strong. 200 plus. Two pretty poor performances. You got 10th, a 21st, a 10th, a 1st. Not the worst. I think it's total procs, but man, it was hard to argue with last year's 200 plus. We'll take a look at 2021 just quickly, see if I can't gather something here. I don't see a whole lot. Total procs, 200 plus, not so much. I'm still thinking it's total procs, if anything. So, your top proximity players, and I don't use the difficult, relative par or short course or anything like that. Proximity is just proximity in my mind. Your top total procs players in the past 36 rounds: Scotty Scheffler, Lucas Glover, Colin Morikawa, Tom Kim, Chris Kirk, Alex Smalley, Adam Svensson, JJ Spawn, Hideki, and Brendan Todd. We can look at 200 plus, I suppose. It might have been the most correlating among the past 3 years, but I'm not terribly confident in it. Your top 200 plus proximity players: Tagala, Scheffler, List, Charlie Hoffman, Cam Young, JJ Spawn, Alex Smalley, Rory, Tom Kim, and Adams Vincent. But I'm still leaning towards this total prox being what we want to look at in terms of proximity. All right, let's move to par threes. Cover the par threes, fours, and fives very quickly, and then round out the show off with our Microsoft Excel data. So last year, John Rahm played the par threes exceptionally well. 9. I mean, he probably doubled. Yeah, he more than doubled everybody. Callum Tarrant was a miscut, but honestly, the par threes were decent last year in terms of correlation, really, if you think about it. Because they didn't look like they were going to be much based on last night's data. Looks like 175 to 200 would be the range, which makes sense. Two of the four par threes fall to this range on the scorecard, and your winner led in it. So makes a lot of sense. Hey Jeff, good evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. Just join. What type of contest do you typically get in? So I do. I always put in one team, and what I think is my best team in the sand trap, the not necessarily the Millie Maker, but whatever the $20 to whatever $25 team or contest is, pitch and putt, sand trap, whatever it's called that week. I always put one into that one, and then I do a lot of like three max entry, single entry type lineups. But thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you had a much better WAMPO than I did. I saw you posted or mentioned that you had 1 6-6 lineup, which is one more than I had. But not sure how that one finished, because I know you had Connors, Hoagie was in it. I can't remember who else you had on that 1 6-6. Tagala, Clark, Minwoo, Harmon, and I think that's Hoagie. Tagala was okay. Clark really made a run at the end. Tagala really made Wyndham Clark really made a run at the end of the third round on Sunday, and then fell apart on round 4. Because he had moved his way all the way up to the top 10 at one point. So, I had outrights on Tagala and Wyndham Clark last week. Didn't come through. And, of course, Johnny Vegas bogeys the 72nd hole to take himself out of the top 20. That would have been another wager that I would have hit. I had a top 20 wager on Vegas, but, them's the breaks. So, hopefully we'll get this aligned for the Genesis this week. But yeah, par threes, I didn't think there was going to be much. And other than John Rahm last year, they were fairly, there wasn't a lot to be gained on the par threes. But certainly John Rahm played them well. If we go to Neiman's win 2 years ago, still decent amount of performance here in these par threes. 10th, 2nd, 7th, 1st. Maybe par threes do have a little bit more than I would have thought here. So, and I don't think there's a particular range of par threes, because you have a short, you have 2 from 150 to or 175 to 200. You have the extremely long par 3. So, not really feeling a particular range. So, your top par 3 performers in the field this week, the last 36 rounds: Rory, Adam Hadwin, Tommy Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa, Eric Cole, Ludwig Oberg, Keegan Bradley, Luke List, Tom Hoagie, and Sahith Theegala. I wouldn't put a whole lot of emphasis into this. I'm thinking maybe 5%. And when we go into Microsoft Excel, we'll really be able to dissect that information a lot better. What will be important, I can tell you, are these par 4s, particularly of this length here. But look at the performance in these par 4s. Now, John Rahm didn't play them particularly well. He was okay. But Max Homa, Cantlay, Theegala, Kuchar, all these players played them extremely well. Only one player negative from 450 to 500. Only a half a shot lost throughout the week. We sort on the par fours. John Rahm falls. He didn't play them the best by any means, but second, third, sixth, eighth, top 30, kind of middling, fifth, couple top 15s and top 20s. And all of the strokes gained appear to be in these two ranges here, the 400 to 450, although you do have a miscut from Kitayama fairly high, 450 to 5. What you don't have is a miscut in the top performers of the 450 to 5. So that's the range that I still think is the most important, and makes sense because 6 of the 11 fall fall into that range. But these par fours are going to have some big significance this week. We saw that with the waste management last week as well. These par fours, 10, 13, 11, 7. This is 2 years ago. 8, huge numbers in here. Second, first, ninth, 21st, 4th, 7th, 7th. Huge numbers. Again, look at the two particular ranges, especially the 450 to 5. Only one player negative in them. 7.8. Now our winner really took advantage 2 years ago in the 400 to 450. 7.8. But not necessarily all that correlating after him. You see a couple of pretty high miscuts. 55, 61st. Whereas second, 15th, 4th, 9th. Yes, one miscut from Brandon Hagee, but a lot of good performances after him too. Looking like these two ranges, mostly this one. So, in the field this week, your top par 4 performers overall: Rory, Scheffler, Adam Scott, Victor Hovland, Ben On, Bo Hostler, Obear, Xander, Eric Cole, and Patrick Cantlay. From the 450 to 5, your top 10: Hovland, Rory, Xander, Obear, Cantlay, Eric Cole, Hostler, McCarthy, Wyndham Clark, and Andrew Putnam. So these bottom 3 aren't there in terms of total par 4s, but in terms of the length that matters the most at Riviera, they rise quite a bit. McCarthy, well, I was trying to highlight just those 3. I don't know if it's going to work. There we go. Putnam, Clark, and McCarthy. They are very good at the range at Riviera, perhaps a little bit lesser in terms of the 400 to 450. And then lastly, we're going to look at par 5s, and this one's going to be very, very easy and very quick. You have the par 5 first, 503 yards on the scorecard. The other two measure to here. That's generally where we're going to be focused, 1.6 on that one hole. And you see it didn't contribute a whole lot versus you got 4.7s, 3.7, 2.7s, and a whole lot more correlation. Rahm played the par 4s, the par 5s fairly well. Really everybody did except for Homa. Very correlating as well. 2022 par 5s. Pretty darn correlating as well. And if we sort on it, it's that range. So, close that out. Our top par 5 performers from 550 to 600 yards in the field this week: Jordan Spieth, Ricky, Max Homa, Wyndham Clark, Colin Morikawa, Harris English, Lee Hodges, Ben Griffin, Keegan Bradley, and Cam Davis. Again, skipping Stefan Jaeger. He didn't withdraw. He fell out of the Aon Swing 5 thanks to Charlie Hoffman's elite play at the Wampo. Let's move to Microsoft Excel. Really get a gauge and really dig in deep into this data. Let's go ahead and just start with the specific Genesis data. So last night we took a look at Riviera and the Genesis against all of the other full field courses. Tonight let's just look at Riviera in particular. Just focus on Riviera. You see around the green, been pretty darn consistent and is a little bit higher than off the tee. This is why I am very cautious at putting off the tee in. It would be the least of the 4 of the strokes gained categories if it makes it into the mixed condition model. But we're clearly looking at approach and putting. Now the approach has been a lot more volatile, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Putting's been pretty much consistent the last 5 years. But around the green is going to have some significance, absolutely, because these greens are pretty hard to hit. Distance, other than in 2020, distance has played a pretty big factor. So I'm starting to think about, perhaps putting 5% in distance in the model this week. Fairways, not a big deal at all. These greens, very volatile the last 3 years. They've been pretty important in the past. I still like the idea of putting greens in the mixed condition model, but hard to ignore these larger numbers and distance. When we look at the Honda, or I guess now is the Cognizant, we're not going to be focused on distance at all. With the Waste Management, with the Waste Management Phoenix, distance really wasn't a big factor this past week. It had been. So, now the Genesis is showing it's even more important in distance than the Waste Management, and we know how much we looked at distance last week. So, perhaps a little bit in distance. This is why I still think the bogey avoidance is going to be more important than birdies gained. Generally speaking, the birdies gained are going to have the higher raw number. Here at Riv, it's the bogey avoidance, and look how consistent that metric has been. Your outliers, if you will, the ends of your data, 3.15 and a 2.93, that is a very, very concentrated set of data there. That's very consistent. So we can feel very confident that bogey avoidance is going to have about this level of importance, whereas the birdies has been anywhere from less than 2 to over 3. And even so, the highest number, 3.09, is about what the average of bogey avoidance has been. So that's why I'm focused on the bogey avoidance, even though in the prior leaderboards, the birdies gained players really shot up in the upper echelon of finishes. But where looking at the particular sets of data really comes in is in these par 3s, par 4s, and par 5s. We can really narrow in and figure out if there's a range of par 3s, 4s, and 5s that we want to focus on. So for example here, par 3s play to about a 1.5, but really only about 40%, maybe even less, comes in the most important range. That's why I'm thinking we're just going to be looking at total par 3s, because the 150 to 175 range also plays somewhat important. You don't want to ignore this hole, which I think that was part of my issue, is that last week for the Phoenix, the par 4 17th actually did contribute quite a bit in terms of strokes gained. Now the two main were here, but I separated out the 400 to 450 last week at Phoenix. Really, the one hole, the par 4 17th, was pretty darn close to all of the 400 to 450. So that was a mistake on my end. I should have just looked at par 4s in general. So par 3s, we're not going to have any particular range for the Genesis. Now the par 4s, quite a bit different story. Almost all of your strokes gained come into here. Again, 450 to 5 seems to be the most important. And this is just the drivable par 4 10th. I just got through saying how it was a mistake last week, but the data supports that you kind of just ignore this hole and just look at 400 to 450 and 450 to 5 par 4s. I don't know. It's pretty close. I think we're going to look at 450 to 5s in general, like separate them out since they are the highest. But really, it's just kind of all in these par 4s, all par 4s. And then par 5s, 2/3 of your strokes gained par 5s come into this range. 2/3. So that signifies that we just look at that range. So there's a look at Riviera in terms of some really detailed data around Riviera, the course. Let's look at the mixed condition model that I made last year, see how good it was results-wise, and how predictive some of the metrics were, what I looked at and whatnot. So from the start, I would say this is pretty solid. I only had 4 missed cuts in my top 20. I'm looking for 4 to 5. It is golf, things happen, so 4 to 5 is pretty solid. And I've had 4. I had the winner. Take off however much credit you want. I mean, Jon Rahm is one of the premier players in the world, so it's not really going out on a limb to have Jon Rahm the winner in my top 5, but the fact was he's still there. Homa played well. Morikawa and Cantley to a little bit lesser of an extent in terms of percent owned. Had a good performance from Will Zalatoris, who was right at 10%. So this is a good model. I would accept this again in terms of results. Of course, we always want to be better. We want to have 0 of our top 20 miss the cut. We want the winner to be number 1, yada, yada, yada. But in terms of a results base, this was pretty solid. So what did I look at? I had 15% in bogey avoidance when it was difficult to par. Makes a lot of sense. It sounds like we're going to be doing a lot of the same. Maybe not 15%, but we're definitely going to be looking at bogey avoidance and using the filter when it's difficult. I had 10% on fast POA. This will be changed a little bit because now we're going to be looking at just those specific courses: Pebble, Torrey Pines, and Riv. But 10% makes a lot of sense. I did have 10% in distance, so we'll see how predictive that was. That might be a little bit heavy. I think that should probably be backed down to 5. 10% greens when it's difficult. 10% procs. I did have 10%, full 10% in par 3s. Interesting. I separated out that length of par 4s. This is way too low an approach. I'm really going to emphasize the irons this year. So this is going to be bumped up significantly. I looked at around the green. I did separate out the 400 to 450. Not terribly confident to do that again this year. We'll see. The specific range of par 5s and 3-putt avoidance. So how predictive were these? Lower the number, the better. The best one, bogey avoidance at a 43. So that really signifies that that's where we need to be looking in terms of scoring in the mixed condition model. The putting, I'm a little bit, I'm okay with seeing this number being a little bit higher, considering we're going to be changing the filter on it. So, but it's still pretty darn good at a 50, 53 on the greens. In driving distance, not the greatest. Look at procs, not the great. Oh, sorry, that's off your screen. Procs at a 55, par 3s at a 57. Not the best. Not the best in terms of predictability. Look at these par 4s, 46 from 450 to 5. That's why I'm thinking I really want to emphasize that range of par 4s. The approach was right at a 50. It's okay. Pretty average. Around the green was terrible in terms of predictability. The par 5s and 3-putt avoidance weren't great either. So it gives me a little bit of comfort to see the bogey avoidance be very solid. It gives me a little bit of comfort to see the par 3s not be as predictable, or at least last year. I really like seeing a good predictability score from here. So we're looking at a lot of the same metrics, I think. We're definitely going to be moving some percentages around. But we're looking at a lot of the same metrics. I'm definitely going to have some 3-putt avoidance, since 3-putts are pretty common around Riv. Definitely going to be looking at that length of par 5s. Going to be upping this approach by a lot. Par 3 is probably going to back down a little bit. But yeah, we're looking at a lot of the same metrics and filters for this year's mixed condition model. So now that we have seen what metrics we think are going to play the best, or have played the most important or the best at Riv the past 5 years, let's see, of the players in the field this week, who have been the best at those metrics. So we'll round the show out with the early look file. In the past 5 years, at Riviera specifically, your top iron players have been Gary Woodland. It's only 1 for 2. Colin Morikawa, 4 for 4. Victor, Cam Young, Zalatoris, Xander, Tony Finau, Scotty Scheffler. These guys who have continuously, year after year after year, been at the top of the leaderboard at Riviera. Look what they're doing. They are leading with the irons. Rory, a little bit less so in terms of average finish, but still 4 for 5. Luke List, premier ball striker, makes a lot of sense. Max Homa, Cantley, Fitzpatrick. I mean, even Tiger Woods has hit his irons well here. We're going to skip the around the green because there's a few different things I want to look at, but we definitely want to look at putting. So in the past 5 years, specifically at Riviera, your top putters. Svensson only 1 year. English, Max Homa. McCarthy, not too much in terms of success, but all-world putter, and he's very good on Poana as well. Adam Scott, 5 for 5. Sam Ryder's been okay. Wyndham Clark's 3 for 3 with an average finish inside the top 20 here at Riviera. He's putt well. Hodges, Cam Young is putt well here, and he's not a very good putter. Zalatoris, much the same. Hovland, Kuchar, Sam Burns. Sam Burns has been all or nothing. He's had a couple of decent performances, but a lot of lackluster performances as well. Tony Finau putts well here. So make a note of those players. I will look at greens. I do think greens are going to have a decent amount of a factor this week. So your top greens gained players: Gary Woodland, only 1 for 2. There's Colin, Scotty, Xander, Rory, Adam Scott, Will Zalatoris, Victor Hovland, Cam Young. Again, these players who have consistently, year after year after year, played well. It's the irons, and it's in the greens. Irons and greens. We'll take a look. Whoops. I wanted to grab all of that. Take a look at bogey avoidance. Your best bogey avoiders the past 5 years. Cam Young, number 1. Hovland and Rory again. Wyndham Clark, Xander, Homa, Kuchar, Morikawa, Scheffler, Cantley. My goodness, this is just the who's who of who's who at Riviera. Henley a little bit less so. Spieth's been pretty mediocre, I would say. At least in relation to these other players at Riv. Adam Scott a little bit lower here in terms of bogey avoidance. Finau. I'm going to skip the 3s. Probably skip the 5s. Let's go to the par 4s, 450 to 5. Your top performers on par 4s in that range. Again, Cam Young, Victor, Wyndham Clark, Max Homa, Scotty Scheffler, Adam Scott. Luke List a little bit less so. Colin Morikawa. Siwoo's played those lengths of par 4s very well. Rory, Sam Ryder, Patrick Cantley, Tagala, Tiger. Played that length of par 4s very well. I'm going to do the last one on proximity, unless someone from the community wants to see a metric that I didn't highlight, but we're right on time. Your best total prox performers the last 5 years at Riviera in the field this week. Cam Young, Gary Woodland again, just 1 for 2, but Hovland, Zalatoris, Finau, Sahith, Morikawa, Scotty, Patrick Cantley, loves Riv, Wyndham Clark, Russell Henley, Xander, Rory. So there's a look at the players who have performed the best at these various metrics that we think are going to be the most important this week at Riviera and how they've done in the past 5 years in those metrics. Sort it back on best average finish. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel. Thanks to Jeff for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. A quick reminder that the DFS Tactics show will, just like all of February, DFS Tactics show will be at 10 p.m. Eastern, not 9. 10 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show. Hope to see you all there. Again, if you did not, or if you don't follow me on social media, I posted some research earlier today regarding the pattern of winners going all the way back to 2012 for the Genesis Invitational, and listed the players who fit that criteria that are in the field this week. So if you're interested in that, I ask that you go follow me on social media. You can check out that information yourself. Always feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions on this player or that player throughout the week. I'll be making my mixed condition model tomorrow and then starting to tweak it, late tomorrow into Wednesday as that forecast finalizes and hopefully firms up and gets consistent. But thanks again for all the support. Love what I do, taking an in-depth look at sports statistics, mainly golf and baseball, but giving you an analyst or a statistician or a data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Again, don't forget to check out the show Wednesday and set your reminders for 10 p.m. for the DFS Tactics show. Thanks again to Jeff for jumping in chat. For all of the wagers you've made so far this week for the Genesis Invitational, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Genesis Invitational, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.